Enforcive. My name is Martin Norman, part of the technical services team at Enforcive, and today I'd like to introduce you to our data provider module. Enforcive produces many tools for security, whether you need compliance, enhanced access control, event auditing, or any of the items displayed on this slide. The data provider for IBM i comes into the event auditing category. It's a tool to help you send events from the IBM i to a centralized event monitor. We have a number of places we can collect that from, whether it's from the application audit events through the exit points, the system audit journal, file audit, view data, message queue audit, and the history log. All of these will be covered later on in the presentation. For those of you familiar with the Enterprise Security Client, you'll find the System I data providers the very last item on the tree structure. Selecting the data providers, we can see a screen showing us the three major elements of the data provider. On the right hand side, we can view and even change the settings defining what is collected from the system through the data provider and sent out to the external system. The tree structure in the top middle of the screen shows us the types of data provider we can collect, and towards the bottom of the screen in blue we can see the various tasks we can perform to collect the job and to change the global settings. So first I will show you how we can change the settings. Here we can see that the system audit element of the data provider was selected, and I selected the change settings button, and I can now change 4 different elements of those settings. The first of those elements is fairly straightforward. The main change you can make here is whether a collection should be active or inactive, and as you can see on mine, it's currently active. The second tab allows me to specify where I'm collecting the data from. With the audit journal there's no extra selection available, but with some of the other sources there is a variety of selection options here. The third tab includes the collection policy, and this is where we can define criteria, the important elements that we want to look for when deciding what events to send from the data provider to the external system, whether a SYSLOG server or one of the internal Enforcive tools. We can see on the first criteria all I've selected is the fact that I want all users to be brought in to the data provider collection policy. I could choose a specific user or group of users, but for my purposes here I chose select all. The second item down, action group, allows me to specify which of the IBM audit journal types I would like to collect and bring into my system. By double clicking on the action group, I'm allowed to maintain that parameter. I can change the group, and we've got different types of group here. We can see I created a group called security actions, and the bottom of the panel on the right hand side shows that I've chosen the authority failures of type AF and PW for invalid password in my group, but also 3 of the security tasks as well. So I've defined a subset of the events from the IBM audit journal that I want to collect and provide on to the centralized monitoring system. The next criteria that I have selected is a condition field, and this is a more variable facility for you. You can build a query statement using the query wizard or using the advanced tools there, but I've just made a very simple request here saying I do not want to bring in user where username is equal to QTM HHTTP1, so I can select and deselect different types of users, jobs, etc. The final tab in the settings for the system audit is where am I going to be sending my events to, because the whole purpose of this is we're collecting a subset of events from the IBM i and pushing them onto a more centralized monitoring system. First example here, you can see I've chosen a SYSLOG server I've specified where we'll find that server, the IP address, what port it's listening on, and the format of the message that I want to send out to that SYSLOG server. Once I've completed my criteria, I've defined which events I want to have collected by the data provider, and that data provider collection is now active, I now need to define a monitor job that's going to run and collect the jobs, prepare the data ready for it to be sent. One way of achieving that is through our real-time monitor job. With this you can have a job running in the background on the IBM i. Constant way of achieving that is through the real-time monitor jobs. Here we can have jobs running in the background on the IBM i, looking for events which meet the criteria we've previously defined and preparing those to be sent on to the SYSLOG server. Alternatively, if you don't want to use a real-time monitor so that the data is sent permanently over to the SYSLOG server, you can define different types of data extraction jobs. For example, the one I'm showing you here is a manual one-off extraction, and here I've specified that I want to extract transactions from a couple of days on the system, bring those over to the SYSLOG server, so it's a one-off exercise to import some of those transactions. Alternatively, I could also specify a periodic job scheduler so that a job will run based on a scheduling system that you have on your system there, and every third item is the periodic job scheduler, which allows you to add entries into your scheduling system on the IBM i so that the collection takes place maybe every hour, or maybe you want it to only extract 6 o'clock in the evening, Monday through Friday. You have that choice, so you can either have real-time, periodic, or manual extraction. So as I mentioned earlier, the whole point of using the data provider is that you're sending your data in to a centralized monitoring system. So you've pointed those events at a particular server, and we then start to bring that data into the system. Here we can see an example of a simple SYSLOG product. We've just brought some transactions in, and you can see various events coming in from the system I. You'll see there in the narrative. However, opening the message view within this SYSLOG Watcher product, I can see here this transaction that I highlighted is an invalid password. So you'll see a lot of the parameters you're used to from an IBM i. It's showing job name, it's showing receiver details at where it came from, username, etc. And you can see that transaction appearing in your SYSLOG server. Selecting a second transaction, this one here is a system value change, and you can see, for example, this is the password maximum length being changed from a value of 8 to a value of 10. So you can see your security events from the IBM i appearing in this SYSLOG product. However, we do have an alternative. Enforcive does provide a cross-platform audit product that will perform a similar function to those SYSLOG servers, but very focused on output from those IBM i systems and some other sources as well. So you can see here, as well as the IBM i, we can pull in information from IBM mainframe, from various types of Unix system, from databases, from Microsoft servers, and even from other SYSLOG entries as well. This information is pulled in through to our central repository, and once it's there, you can monitor, analyze, alert, and report upon that data. Returning to the data provider screens, I'm now looking at the settings for the application audit. And for those of you familiar with our product, this is where we monitor transactions that go through the IBM exit points, for example FTPs, telnets, ODBC connections. Here we can see my settings for the application audit data provider. For the previous definition, where I was working on the IBM audit journal, I had specified all account types, so all users, and I've done the same thing here for my application audit events as well. However, I've chosen just a small subset of the applications that the Enforcive Enterprise Security can monitor. So I've picked out FTP server, FTP client, and the ODBC database transaction. This time I've not chosen to use the condition, but I could use it in the same way as before, picking out job names, usernames, etc. But I do have the facility to specify whether I want to track successful events going through the exit points or warnings and rejections. So with this one here, I'm saying that I'm only interested in someone trying to do an FTP or an ODBC transaction who gets rejected in some way because of the rules within the software. Moving on to the Destination tab, we'll see here that rather than choose SYSLOG Server, I've selected the specific connection type of CPA Remote Collection Server. So now I'm saying I want to send it on to the Enforcive CPA product so we can see the transactions appear there. A few other parameters there, what library we're going to use to collect the data into, and the buffers and the size of files, but we'll move on from here. So here we can see the cross-platform audit product. It uses the same Enforcive client graphical interface that you've used for your IBM i collection of data, security administration, etc. So we've minimized the amount of learning for an administrator because the screens look the same, functionality is very similar. But if I drill down now into the central data repository and look at a transaction within that data repository, we can see the sort of transaction which has been brought into the CPA product. So here we have a warning message. This is the event information in the very top right hand corner of the little window. The W there is saying it's a warning, and this is because someone was trying to do an FTP, and based upon their user group settings they should not have been authorized to perform that FTP, but because we're running in warning mode on this system, it let them through anyway. So this is information for your administrator. I mentioned early on in the presentation that we can bring in information from multiple sources on the IBM i into a CPA product or to a SYSLOG server, and I've shown you two examples so far. One was the system audit from the IBM Audit Journal, and one was the application audit through the exit points, but there are others as well, and I'm just going to use the CPA product here just to show you a few more of those examples. This one here is a file audit event, so it's showing me changes made to a critical file on my system. It's showing me who made that change, how they made that change, and the fact that the only change they made was the first name of a record was changed from Betty to Elizabeth. So you can see before and after image next to each other of changes that are made to your critical files. So that's very important information to pull into a centralized repository such as CPA. So that gives you another example of the sort of event we can bring into the CPA product or send to a SYSLOG server. There are other types as well, depending on the release of the Enforcive Enterprise Security product you're using. The other types of information that can be brought in include the view data, where we are tracking reads made to critical files on your system. History log monitoring, where we're pulling information in from the QHIST files on your system, and also the message queue monitor. So if you are pointing your enterprise security product at a message queue and watching for particular messages, again we can pick those up and send them onto a SYSLOG server or onto the Enforcive central data repository within CPA, and you can see all of that information in one place. With many organizations, it's critical to get data events such as the ones we've shown you here into one centralized location so you have a more holistic view of what's going on around your network. Hopefully this video explained the power and functionality of the Data Provider module. For further information, please contact any of our many partners or through our website at www.enforcive.com. Thank you again. Goodbye.